Okay, so hello and welcome back to another Unity tutorial. In this one we're going to be continuing with the RPG Systems tutorial series. In this video we're going to move on from the last video and start making the vendor UI. So last video we added the vendor occupation to the NPC UI, and when you click on it, it displays all the items that NPC has and how many. But what we ideally want to do is open a panel, and on the panel we want to set a buy tab and a sell tab, for example. And when you click on the buy tab, you preview the NPC's inventory and you see what items they have and how much it's going for. And then you click through those. You can select an item you wish to buy, drag a slider, for example, to choose how many you want of that item. So if they have 20, we'll set the min and max of the slider to be 1 and 20, so you can buy from a minimum of 1 to a maximum of 20, and then it'll display underneath how much that's going to cost you. And we might even limit it so we can only drag up as high as we can afford. Either that, or they can drag to any quantity, but when they press the buy button, it'll say you can't buy that because you don't have enough money or whatever. So currently we don't have any actual money on the player, we don't have any way to store that, so we're going to move on to do that in the coding part, which will be in the next video. This video, we're just going to do the UI so we can display the NPC's inventory and we can display our own inventory. There'll be a tiny bit of coding in this video, but not really much, so we'll get into that quickly. But of course, first, before we get into that, I need to thank my patrons, with special thanks to Flow State Games, Average Morning, Art Farrell, Buddha Ray, Remy Baldwin, and Phil Baum. If anyone else is able to help support the channel monetarily, the link is down below. There's also links down below to my social media, such as Twitch, Twitter, Discord, and so on. So if you can help support me on those, it'd be greatly appreciated. But apart from that, let's get to the video. Okay, so as I said last video, we got the NPCs working in the basic way at least, so we can walk up to them, interact, and it fills up the UI and displays this button because Bob can trade. Bob has a health potion and tons of health. He has 3 health potions because that's all items we've made so far. So if we walk over to this NPC, Bill, he doesn't do anything, right? He's just an NPC with no occupations. So this allows us, without having to write any code specifically for each NPC, you can just essentially drag on the components as to what they have. So if they're a vendor, we said they need an inventory, or an item container at least. So if you look at test NPC, which is Bob, we have a vendor, and vendor has inventory, and inventory has his list of items, which he has 3 health potions essentially there. So we want to be able to display those 3 health potions on the UI, and we're going to get to that now. So the way I've decided to do it is we're going to use events, because in reality we could do it hard-coded, but we'd have to make some awkward thing where the NPC stores a list of the different bits of the UI, and then the button says enable this bit of the UI. But in my opinion, it's quite logical just to have the vendor button essentially raise an event saying start vendor or whatever, or start shop, start trading. And if we raise the event and pass through the vendor, then by passing through the vendor we have access to its item container. Equally, we could also just pass through the item container. I don't think there's any problem with that, but I feel like we should pass through the vendor. It allows us to essentially pass through more data, right? Because we can pass through the item container, and then if we end up adding any more data to the item to the vendor that is needed in that part, for example, right? If the vendor ever needed money to be able to, if you sell items to the vendor, he needs to give you his money, rather than just the money appearing from nowhere. He might need a currency that you need to pass through. So I feel like in hindsight, well, we don't have hindsight yet, but I'm looking ahead and I'm considering it makes more sense to have a vendor than just an item container event. So I think we should just make the UI and then do the coding later or next video. We should try and avoid as much coding for this video. So we've got the canvas for the NPC. Now, we could just make a canvas on here for the canvas vendor. The only problem with that is sometimes when we interact with an NPC, we might want it to do more than just toggling UI on here. We might want it to do, for example, a cinematic, and that's nothing to do with the NPC. Maybe you interact with an NPC, you do some dialogue, and then at the end of it, something else happens. So what you want is, I'd say, just to have it completely separated as different prefabs. So if we just make a new game object, just like always, and we'll just call it vendor UI. Put the vendor UI up with the rest of them. Now, I would ideally have the vendor UI render on top of the NPC UI, so higher than 600. It doesn't matter because we're going to be toggling off the NPC UI when we toggle on the vendor UI, at least that's the way I kind of plan on doing it. So what we want to have is we want to have a canvas on here, so create a new canvas, and make this canvas be scale with 1920 by 1080, and make sure you drag to the right. And we do need a graphic raycaster because we're interacting with it. and we'll just call this canvas underscore vendor. And back into the scene view in 2D, we'll preview what it looks like. Now, I'd say for the UI, we just need one kind of thing in the middle here, like a rectangle, almost like the vendor UI, but we could even just reuse the same look of the NPC UI. I don't really have any preference with that, so I'm just gonna essentially, I want to copy and paste this and then delete all the data on it. So if we just put that down there and then get rid of all this stuff, apart from the close button. Actually, yeah, get rid of the close button. So we can do this. Currently, does the close button actually work? I think I did make it work. Currently, that close button just disables that, which ends the NPC. But you don't want to be able to like just close out of a dialogue. I mean, maybe you do, and then you want it to restart when you speak to them again. But some games have dialogue where the choices you make matter, so you want to be able to like finish the full dialogue probably to not make it bug out in some way. For now, I'm just gonna say the close button does just close the vendor UI. So if we say on here, whoops, we want to drag in the canvas vendor, game object set active false. Okay, now if I go to prefabs, we want to save this as a prefab, the vendor UI, and we're gonna go look at it now. Apparently we can't see it for some weird reason. So the background is an image component, the canvas has all its stuff on. The scales are okay. I'm just wondering what is up with this. Rect transform, rect transform. There's something I'm missing here. Is it the sort order needs to be probably 700 for this, I'd say. It's enabled. So what is up with the background NPC? Oh, it isn't actually on scale. It's apparently got 1. It had 0 in them all. That's a bit odd. Anyway, regardless, we can continue. So the background, I'm going to copy the component and change it so we get the same rect transform. Like so. And now on here we want to be able to display the inventory. So I'm going to get into designing that now. I'm going to skip ahead. You can obviously slow it down. I'll put it in slow-mo. Whilst I was editing the video, I realized that I said slow-mo instead of like speeding up. So just so you guys don't point that out in the comments and embarrass me, I have acknowledged it and I'm correcting myself now. Sorry about that. Okay, so obviously I've not completed it yet, but the rest of it I want to kind of go through with you guys. Obviously I've sped the bit up before this. So yeah, I've got the background and I've got the holder, which is a vertical layout group, because what I want to do is I want to essentially ask the inventory to make a button for every different type of item in the inventory. If we've got any duplicates, like the same item multiple times, I just want to display it in one go and then get the total quantity of that item. So we'll just say, even if they have like 2 stacks of 10 of an item, it'll say they have 20 of the item, and we want to select it and do the sliding down here. We'll have like a slider with the min and max and a buy button. So we actually, we want a slider here so we can scroll to through the items in case they have more than the max. So as you see, if I add more, it'll go off the bottom. So on the background here, we want to add a mask. So the mask will stop things that go past it. And we kind of, just for visual reasons, we want to either change the width of this, or because if you go back, you'll see. Whoops. This is like nice what it looks like here, but then as soon as you add another one, a bit of it's still on there, so you probably want to tweak the spacing perhaps so that you either, well, don't have any spacing, which doesn't look that great. I think that actually looks alright if you go for okay, not 0, but whatever's required to make that touch the bottom pretty much. Or I'll just let it be like this. Imagine we had the mask on. I might as well actually put the mask on. So yeah, go back to the background and put the mask. And then from there, I guess in the game view, you can tweak the spacing. Or even instead of the spacing, you can just tweak the... So we can have the spacing as 20, which obviously doesn't look amazing. But if we tweak the heights of them all, for example, we could just have it be like that. So the height could be 80 or 85. 85 looks good. I feel like that's the same all around. I've not calculated it, so you guys can obviously take more consideration into that. But that's what it looks like. And then as we add more, oops, yeah, we need to obviously do it with more. Otherwise, it's not gonna look right. So as soon as one goes off the bottom, it's like that. I just think that looks too close to the bottom, if you get what I mean. So maybe actually, we do just leave it 85, but we tweak the padding, so the top padding can be reduced to be 15 or even 10. So we put all the padding as 10, and then tweak the spacing. So that looks about 10. That looks good to me. Okay. Tweaked all the numbers. Let's just put that to a 25, 24, 23, 22. It's gonna have to be a 23. And now we want to add a scroll bar. So I always hate scroll bars and find them difficult to implement just because, I don't know, I just find it really annoying. I'm trying a sort of easy way. I want to actually shove this down by like one item's worth, I guess, like to here. So like 160. And the reason's because we want to put those tabs in. So I feel like it makes sense to put the tabs here. So let's just leave the scrolling for a minute, and we're going to add a UI button. I have 2 buttons. I'm just going to go put one here. That could be halfway between the, I mean, if I go to here and then half the width, so it's gone from 700 to obviously 350, and we go move it there, and then we make another button, put it right next to it, and then maybe we want to reduce the width and the height just by tiny bits, like we can have some padding essentially, so minus 20, minus 20, minus 20, minus 20. So now we've got these 2 buttons above that are the tabs. I don't know why I have a 3rd button. I just must have misclicked. So we have, yeah, button underscore by, and then button underscore cell by, and then we'll just scale it up to be, what, like font size 80, and go back to the original font. And make sure this looks good on 80 as well. By cell. Like so. So I'm just going to call it text underscore by and text underscore cell. And select the 2 buttons. I personally don't like using the default UI sprite on the buttons. And also I'm going to turn off the automatic thing. Now you can add some more padding here if you want. I feel like it actually looks better if I don't have padding on the sides. So I'm going to tell them to add 10 to their width and then move them both by 10 to the size. So the POSX should be minus 10 or minus 5 even, and then this should be plus 5. So it goes to minus 45. And now that looks a bit better. The height could be reduced a bit. Obviously, as I said, this video is just about designing UI, so it's, yeah, that looks good to me. For now, at least, I'm happy with that. So when we click buy, we expect it to change all this to be displaying their inventory, the vendor. And when we click sell, we expect it to display ours. And then over here we can have a preview of the item, right? We can have the item's name and description, and then at the bottom we can have the buying. So now I'm going to get into do that. Okay, I feel like this is what I'm going to do with for now. So we have essentially the item data, which is the rarity and all the information on it. We've wrote a function for item get item info, display info or something. The stuff we do when we mouse over an item we want to display there. Item description is just a bit of text. Item name, obviously. The quantity we're trying to sell, so we would drag this slider forwards and backwards to alter that number and then confirm. We do want to be able to see obviously the price as well, so I guess I'll change that. Obviously there's a slider you can drag, confirm button, which is when you click it to do the selling or the buying. Then we have the two tabs and the background. So that's pretty much all the UI we need to do apart from the actual buttons themselves. So if we go to the background of the items and click on an image, obviously this image is going to end up being a button, so we'll call it button underscore vendor. Let's call it button underscore vendor item. We got it already in prefab, so we drag the button down, delete all these, and then in here we just want to set up some stuff. So ideally what we want to do is we want to make it a bit darker, and we want to have a UI image component. Make sure it's square, so we can go with 75, 75, or basically we can do attach to the right and pivot to the right, so the X would be 1. So it's at 0, 0. And then now we just, 0, 0, yeah. So the height's 80, so we want the width to be 82. And then now we can change the width and height just to make it square and be the same on either side. So if we do want to go for 75, 75, sorry, we have to change it back to a middle anchor now. Is that actually, that's not touching the sides. Okay, now it's touching the sides, and the width and height are both 85. So then we can select center, and now we reduce the width and the height. So we say -5, -5. For some reason, the width. Oh, it's because I've not changed the pivot back. Sorry, silly me. So now we've done that, we can then say pivot is at 0.5, and we can actually leave that how it was then. We just want to say width -10, height -10. So on the edge we can display the actual item icon if we want to, and then perhaps on the other side we're going to display the item's text. So we'd say we couldn't even just use up this entire bit. I gave 10 padding on all the other bits, so I'm going to give this 10 padding too. So the height should be -10, and the width should be -15, and then which means it's done 7.5 on either side. Wait, so I want to bring in this side. So if I anchor to the left and pivot to 0. And so I want to reduce the width here by 10, no, by 5, and on the other side by I don't know why that seems to have come in so much. I guess it's just -5 then, isn't it? And with this text for the item's name, and I'll just set the pivot back to the middle, doesn't really matter. I'm going to center it to the left. And we're just going to say, for example, iron sword x10 or something. So then we can click on it. We know there's 10 anyway. And then we see the item icon. And obviously this text, we'll keep it a fixed size. Maybe be 40, or at least we'll say auto size, but we'll set a max of 40. So it can keep going along, but then if it gets to the end, it, will shrink in case it needs to. But yeah, I'm happy with that UI now. We just want to say text underscore item name image underscore item icon. Make sure to apply the button prefab. And then now, obviously, if we made loads more, we can then do all this. So the last thing to do is the scroll bar, and then we're done for this video. So we've got all our items here. So to do a scroll bar, we're actually going to need to give it some room. And I think we should do it down the side here. Obviously, I didn't give quite a bit of room for that. So I'm going to quickly just shove everything to the side. I'm not going to make you sit through that. All right, I just moved it all to the side a bit so we can put the scroll bar in the middle. So now on the background vendor, we want to have a UI scroll bar. There I clicked the wrong thing. UI scroll bar. Make it vertical. So if you go down here, you'll see left to right is actually going to be bottom to top. And obviously you scale that, so I'm going to put it between these two guys and I'll reduce the width. Like so. So let's change the background image to be none. Just change the width to be -20. The height can stay the same. I actually might go for another -20. Okay, I'm happy with that. The sliding area itself, the handle, will change scale based on how many items there are in the list. So I'm going to go with like a dark grey, and then the scroll bar itself can be a light grey. And just make sure that's none. So scroll bar. And that scroll bar needs to be linked to this viewport, I guess. So if we look at the background, we've got the background, then the holder, and then the buttons. So usually what you actually need is you need an extra game object above that to have the... if you look at this, right, we're going to add a... Where is it? Background vendor, UI, scroll view. Okay, so if you look here, this is what scroll view is, right? You have the scroll view, which has a scroll rect on it, which is it handles linking up the scroll bar to the stuff. Then on here you have a viewport, which has the image and the mask, and then on the viewport you have the content below that. So if you actually look at the system, I'll just put that to the side. If you look at the system we've got currently, for the viewport we don't have the scroll view. Sorry, the viewport we have with the mask, which is here, the background. Then the holder, which is what holds the content. So that's what they call content. So we just need something on top of this background. It's essentially just going to be an empty game object that uses up the same area. So I'm actually going to copy the component on the background vendor. I'm going to create an empty game object. I'm going to go put it here. I'm going to give it the component values and just drag the background items on top of that and tell the background items to scale full. And then now that's fine. So on this game object we can have a scroll rect. And we're going to say the content is this holder item stuff. It's not horizontal, it's just vertical. It's not elastic, I don't like elastic, it looks weird. And then the vertical scroll bar is just going to be scroll bar. So we can get rid of the scroll view, and if we just press play and test, this works. So now we can actually scroll through our items. You can actually just drag them up like this, so you can go up, you can go down, and so on, so you can preview your items. So that's it for this video. Obviously, yeah, also the scroll sensitivity is ridiculously low, I've always noticed. We can drag the slider, the buttons aren't linked up to anything. That's what we're going to do in the next video and get it all with the UI and everything, with the code. So yeah, you can obviously go through and rename this stuff if you want. Just on the scroll bar, scroll rect, sorry. You might want to change sensitivity. I usually put it to 10, feels good. And also, yeah, you can hide the scroll bar, auto hide. What it does is it basically makes it invisible if you haven't got enough items to need scrolling, but as soon as you've got enough, it'll reappear. I like having it just there anyway. It's up to you. I'm going to just say on here as well. This is going to be just scroll rect underscore items. Okay, so I'm happy with that now. I'm going to leave it there. I'm just going to get rid of all these buttons and apply all the changes to the vendor UI. Apply. Disable the canvas so it's just off like any other bit of UI, and we'll link up all the code next time. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did enjoy the video, feel free to drop a subscribe and like. It would mean a lot. If you want access to the code and everything, this will be on my GitHub. Link is down below. If you want to help support me, the link to my Patreon is down below. All the stuff I said at the start. But yeah, guys, thanks for watching. Hope you tune into the next one. See you guys next time. Thanks for watching, and goodbye.